What would you do if someone told you the one place that held your family's soul had to be torn down, just because it didn't look modern enough for rich outsiders? Would you bow your head, or would you fight? My name's Jack Turner. I'm 49 years old, a truck driver by trade. And before that, I worked down in the mines until my back gave out. Life hasn't been simple. A divorce, long nights on the road, and trying my best to raise my 17-year-old son, Luke. But through it all, one thing has kept me steady: the old log cabin my grandfather built beside Silver Creek Lake. That cabin isn't much to look at for city folks' rough-hewn logs. A stone chimney, a sagging porch swing. But for us, it's history. My grandfather built it in the 1930s with his own hands, hauling stone from the creek bed and pine timbers from the ridge. It's where my family gathered for Christmas dinners, where Dad taught me to shoot a rifle, where Luke caught his first trout. Beside it stands an old stone bridge that crosses a narrow stretch of Silver Creek. I grew up listening to stories of how my grandfather helped lay those stones the year the dam was built, back when the county flooded the valley to create Silver Creek Lake. Folks used to say he built the cabin as a promise. This family will always have a home here, no matter what. For decades, the place stood quiet. Locals respected it. Neighbors waved when we split firewood or patched the roof. But all that changed when the new development rolled in around the year 2018. They called it Silver Creek Heights. Shiny glass houses on the hillside, imported cedar decks, infinity pools staring down over the lake. Big city money rolled in, and with it came rules, their rules. At the center of it all was Karen Whitmore, HOA president before the paint had even dried, always in a tailored jacket, pearls on her neck, heels clicking on the stone paths like she owned the whole mountain. She came from Denver. They said, with more money than patience. At first, it was small things. Complaints about Luke's truck being unsightly, notices about our woodpile being a fire hazard, letters about our chimney smoke being non-compliant with air standards. Then came the hammer. One afternoon in May, I pulled a thick envelope from the mailbox. Inside was an official notice with the HOA seal. The non-compliant log cabin, located at parcel 23, must be removed within 30 days. Failure to comply will result in daily fines of $1,000. I read it 3 times, heat rising in my chest. That cabin wasn't just wood and nails. It was my family's blood, sweat, and memory. And now Karen wanted it erased, like it was nothing but a blemish on her postcard neighborhood. I drove straight up the hill to her fancy glass house. She met me at the door, smiling like a fox with feathers on her lips. "Mr. Turner," she said sweetly, "that cabin may mean something to you, but it doesn't reflect the aesthetic of Silver Creek Heights. Our vision is elevated. Clean lines, modern designs. That old shack, it simply doesn't belong." My hands clenched into fists. That shack was here before you, before your HOA, before your whole damn subdivision. It's not going anywhere. Her smile turned sharp. "Then prepare yourself. Mr. Turner, the fines will begin. And I promise you, no one has ever outlasted me." I walked back down the hill, the letter crumpled in my fist. Knowing deep down this wasn't just about some cabin. Karen had declared war. Karen was not the type to ease off once she thought she had the upper hand. If anything, she came harder. Instead of waiting out the 30 days, and she started hitting me with fines before the ink on her vote was even dry. First, it was my truck, parked in my own gravel driveway. Same spot it had been for 10 years. Suddenly, it was labeled commercial equipment. Fine, $50 a day. Then the flagpole out front, the one with the American flag. Luke and I raised every Memorial Day. Karen called it an unapproved structure. Another $50 a day. When that didn't sting enough, she went after our woodpile, claimed it was a fire hazard. Fine, $100. By midsummer, the letters came daily. Fat envelopes stuffed with notices. Her math said I owed nearly $15,000. My math said she was out of her mind. And the harassment didn't stop there. Some private security SUV started parking at the end of my dirt road, snapping photos like I was a criminal. Neighbors whispered about letters they'd gotten, calling me a dangerous man with a temper. Animal control even showed up one afternoon because someone reported Max, our old hound, as a threat to the neighborhood. The officer laughed when Max licked his hand. Luke clenched his fists. Dad, she's trying to run us out. I looked him in the eye. Son, we've been through worse, but she doesn't know what we hold. Because the more I dug through those courthouse records, the clearer it became. My grandfather's deed wasn't just some old scrap. It carried weight, real legal weight. It tied our name to the very heart of Silver Creek, the dam. And then came the day I found it. At the bottom of a metal lockbox labeled Authorized Personnel, 1934. There, it was a brass key, heavy and tarnished, stamped with the numbers of the original gate valve. My grandfather's name was etched on the tag Turner. I stood in that dusty records room with the key in my palm, heart thundering. That key controlled the spillway of Silver Creek Dam, the lifeline of the entire lake. And by law, by family blood, it belonged to me. That night, I sat on the cabin porch, lantern burning low, lake glittering under the stars. Luke leaned against the rail, restless. So what now? Dad. I closed my fist around the key, feeling the weight of generations. Now we wait. And when the time comes, we show Karen she's not the one holding the cards. The mountain air was cold on my face, but inside me burned a fire I hadn't felt since the mining days. I wasn't just defending an old cabin. I was guarding the heart of Silver Creek. And I knew sooner or later, Karen would push me hard enough that I'd have no choice but to turn that key. Labor Day weekend of the year 2021 rolled into Silver Creek with crisp mornings and skies so blue they looked painted. For most folks, it meant parades, barbecues, and a last swim before the mountain air turned cold. For Karen, it was her crown jewel, the Silver Creek Heights Labor Day Festival. She had poured months of planning and a fortune of HOA funds into it. White tents lined the lakeshore. A stage rose near the water, with lights strung high. And caterers from Denver set up long tables with shrimp cocktails and champagne flutes. A local news crew rolled in to film what she called the premier mountain lake lifestyle event in all of Colorado. But while Karen rehearsed her speech in the mirror, I was at the old concrete dam before dawn, the brass key warm in my pocket. Deputy Colton from the county sheriff's office met me there. He had reviewed the inspection order I'd requested through the state's water board. You're within your rights. Jack, he said, his voice steady. Open it slow. But it's yours to open. I nodded, slid the heavy key into the lock, and turned. The gears groaned like a beast waking from a century of sleep. Then came the roar, deep and thundering, as water rushed through the spillway, foaming white, churning down into the valley below. Mist sprayed my face as the lake began to drop, inch by inch. By mid-morning, while Karen's festival kicked into gear, Silver Creek Lake had sunk by nearly 2 feet. At 10 o'clock sharp, Karen stood at the stage, microphone in hand, pearls glittering in the sunlight. Cameras zoomed in on her smile. "Welcome to the future of mountain living," she declared. But behind her, the lake looked sickly, shallow. Muddy banks peeked out where water once shimmered. Docks sagged. Boats leaned awkwardly into muck. A murmur rose from the crowd. Someone shouted, "The lake's draining." Heads whipped around. Voices tumbled into panic. Kids pointed at fish flopping near the shore. Boat owners cursed, dragging their expensive toys back from the mud. Karen spun, horror in her eyes. As she saw the truth unraveling behind her, she turned back to the crowd, trying to keep her voice calm. "Don't be alarmed. This is, temporary." That's when I stepped forward. I walked straight down the center aisle, brass key swinging on a chain around my neck. The news cameras followed me like spotlights. "This isn't an accident," I said, holding up the inspection order stamped by the state. "This is scheduled maintenance, fully authorized." And for the record, I held up the old deed. Yellowed paper, trembling in the mountain breeze. The Turner family has held rights to this dam since the year 1934. Karen's HOA has no jurisdiction over it. Gasps rippled through the crowd. People craned to read the paper. The cameras zoomed in on the seal and signature. Karen stormed toward me, her voice shrill. "You can't do this. You're ruining everything. You'll pay for this." Turner. Deputy Colton stepped between us, calm as stone. "Ma'am, he's within his rights. If you interfere, you'll be the one facing charges." The cameras caught it all, Karen's face turning blotchy red, her finger jabbing wildly, mascara running as she shrieked about sabotage and conspiracies. And me steady, calm, documents in hand, standing in front of the community. By noon, the lake had dropped another 3 feet. The festival was chaos. The band stopped playing. Caterers packed up food. Investors muttered angrily as they walked away from Karen. Her premier lifestyle event had turned into a public humiliation. That evening, the local news ran the footage on repeat. On one side of the screen was Karen, our screaming, her pearls shaking on her neck. On the other was me, holding the key and the deed. By the next morning, everybody in Silver County had seen the truth. Karen's empire had cracked wide open. The weeks after the festival felt like someone had lifted a heavy weight off Silver Creek. Folks who used to keep their heads down now stopped me in the grocery store to shake my hand. The diner buzzed with talk of the day Karen lost her crown. And kids at the high school joked about not wanting to pull a Karen during pep rallies. But for Karen herself, it was the beginning of the end. Her lawyers filed a storm of lawsuits, emergency injunctions, demands for damages. Even a wild claim that I had terrorized the community by releasing the spillway. Judge Haynes listened, skimmed the papers, and shook his head. Mr. Turner acted fully within his rights as partial owner of the Silver Creek Dam. Motion denied. Each loss drained her bank account. Contractors abandoned her half-finished houses on the ridge. Investors pulled out, furious that their exclusive lakefront paradise now came with national news footage of their president having a meltdown. Then came the real blow. The state launched an investigation into Silver Creek Heights. They found misused HOA funds, fake safety reports written by her brother-in-law, and conflicts of interest in nearly every contract she'd signed. One by one, and her allies vanished. Within 2 months, the HOA board voted her out. The new board, made up of locals instead of outsiders, did something that brought tears to my eyes. They passed a motion to preserve historic landmarks of Silver Creek. At the very top of that list was the Turner cabin, and the stone bridge my grandfather had helped build. One chilly November morning, neighbors gathered by the cabin. A small bronze plaque was set into the stone porch, reading, "Turner Cabin, built 1938, preserved for future generations." Luke stood beside me, hand gripping my arm, his voice soft but proud. Grandpa would be smiling. Dad. The community shifted after that. No more secret fines or threats tucked in mailboxes. People started meeting at the cabin for potlucks. Kids fished off the stone bridge. And even the sheriff stopped by sometimes just to share a cup of coffee by the fire. Karen, meanwhile, disappeared from sight. Rumor spread she sold her glass mansion at a loss and moved down to Arizona. Folks whispered her name like a curse, a warning to anyone who thought they could buy a town's soul. As for me, I didn't gloat. I just felt relief and pride. Pride that my grandfather's work still stood. Pride that Luke had seen what it means to hold your ground. Pride that Silver Creek remembered its roots. But I also knew this my fight wasn't just about one cabin. It was about legacy. About the things money can't measure: sweat, history, memory. And when I stood on that porch with the plaque shining in the sun, I realized something. Karen had thought she could erase the past. Instead, she erased herself. By the summer of the following year, Silver Creek felt like a whole new place. The air was lighter, the water clearer. Kids swam without fear of someone with a clipboard yelling violation. Families laughed along the banks, casting lines into the creek like their grandparents once did. The Turner Cabin, once marked for demolition, had become the symbol of the valley. Couples posed for engagement photos under the stone bridge. Artists set up easels on the porch, painting the view of the lake. School teachers brought classes to talk about history and resilience. Folks started calling it the heart of Silver Creek. Luke grew stronger too. He'd been angry, restless for so long, but now he seemed lighter. He took on a part-time job at the feed store, started fixing up an old Chevy with Mr. Dawson, and even brought a girl by the cabin one Friday night to roast marshmallows. One evening, he looked at me and said, "Dad, this feels like home again." As for me, I found something I hadn't known in years: peace. I still hauled loads across the state in my truck, but every time I turned back down that dirt road and saw the cabin's red chimney smoking, I felt like I'd come home to more than just a house. I'd come home to a promise kept. Karen's name lived on only as a warning. Neighbors would mutter, "Don't go pulling a Karen." If someone got too bossy at the church bake sale or Little League practice. Last I heard, she was renting condos in Arizona, chasing another dream she'd never own. I don't waste anger on her anymore. She tried to wipe away a lifetime of memory. And in the end, she wiped away her own standing. What matters now is what we kept. Because here's the thing, we all have a cabin of our own. Maybe it's a quilt your grandma stitched, or a rocking chair your father carved, or even just a patch of dirt where your kids grew up playing ball. These things aren't about money or rules on paper. They're about roots, about who we are. So let me ask you, if someone like Karen came knocking with fines and threats, telling you to tear it all down, what would you do? Would you hand it over, or would you stand your ground? Even if it meant fighting tooth and nail. Tell me in the comments. I read every word. And maybe your story will be the next reminder that legacy can outlast power, as long as someone's willing to hold the line.